What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, March 4th, 2019, getting into the start of the month, getting into the year here. And there's an old saying, March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. It's certainly like a lion on much of the East Coast right now. I'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show here. Anyway, we've got lots to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. So let's get right on into it, and let's start with the international news and the war zones, emphasis on the plural here. And President Trump has done a U-turn on his Syria policy. We are not withdrawing. He's going to keep U.S. forces in the north with their Syrian Democratic Forces, which are mainly Kurdish allies. And Trump's decision to listen to his advisors is hugely important in that it keeps other allies there, namely France and Great Britain, and retains Americans' barrier to Iran, taking the east of the country as a key corridor all the way to Lebanon. Not that Iran was actually trying to do that, because that's not the way Iran works. Iran is not in the habit of invading other countries in wars of conquest here. But apparently there's been a major escalation in northern Hama. And apparently soldiers have been killed. Fighters of the al-Qaeda-affiliated group Ansar al-Tawhid carried out a major attack on several positions of the Syrian Arab army near the town of Masana in northern Hama. And apparently 16 Syrian Arab army soldiers were killed in the attack. And 6 Ansar al-Tawhid members were also removed. And the attack was launched from the Idlib demilitarized zone, which shows you how well that has worked out. But apparently it's still going on over there, despite our being told that we were going to get out of that mess. Apparently the U.S. coalition has hit Syria's Baghouz with white phosphorus, and civilians have been killed. And the U.S. is claiming, well, we're targeting the ISIS militants. Well, that's all well and good, but even in the case of ISIS militants, the use of white phosphorus for anything other than a smokescreen is banned under international law. So apparently American warplanes dropped the white phosphorus on ISIS positions inside the Baghouz camp, which coalition statements have described as the last holdout to the most hardened militants, numbering in the hundreds. But they took out some civilians at the same time. Iraq's security experts are accusing the U.S. Army of training hundreds of ISIS terrorists in Al-Anbar province after relocating them from Syria to Iraq to prepare them for a new round of insecurity in the country. And apparently the Arabic language Al-Maluma news website is quoting the manager of Badr organization in Al-Anbar province, Kasi al-Anbari, as saying between 700 and 1,000 ISIS militants are being trained by the U.S. troops. So the U.S. is still mucking about in there here. Okay. Apparently, the Saudi coalition has ramped up the war in Yemen again. They've scrapped the truce, whatever truce they had here. There was that UN-brokered peace agreement between Sweden, and they just walked away from it and resumed the war against Yemen. Chairman of the Revolutionary Committee of Yemen, Mohammed Ali al-Houthi, blamed the Saudi-led coalition for the Saturday attack on the vehicles carrying UN ceasefiring monitoring chief Danish General Michael Lolosgaard and his companions. So it's still going on over there as well. All right, let's talk about Venezuela here for a little bit. The U.S. is trying to regime change down there. It's not going very well so far. And apparently the U.S. is trying to form another coalition. Now, every time the U.S. forms a coalition, it's important to understand that the United States is the major player in the coalition. There'll be thousands of U.S. troops, and then there'll be a dozen from this country, and a dozen from this country, and a dozen from this country. And it's all for show to make it look like this is something that's internationally agreed upon to do what the United States wants. And that's all it is. It's for show. So the U.S. is trying to form a coalition to regime change Venezuela, to make it look like, well, we have to change the government in Venezuela. Look, all these other countries are in agreement. We've got to regime change this government over there. And Maduro, of course, is accusing Washington of trying to stage a coup in Venezuela and saying that Guaido will be tried if he returns to Venezuela, because he violated a court-ordered travel ban when he went over to Colombia and Brazil, and he could face up to 30 years in prison for violation of the travel ban. So Bolton is out there saying, we are trying to rally support for the peaceful transition of power from Venezuelan President Maduro to the self-proclaimed interim president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido, whom we recognize as president because he'll give all of Venezuela's oil to American oil companies, and Maduro would not do that. So that's what's going on over there. Meanwhile, the United States is threatening action if Guaido is detained on his return to Venezuela. So, anyway, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. But so far, Maduro has defied the odds in this U.S. regime change effort. Venezuela is scrambling to find buyers for its oil, hoping to keep revenue streams alive, even as Maduro loses control of Citgo. The U.S.-based subsidiary of PDVSA officially severed ties with its parent company in order to comply with U.S. sanctions, according to Reuters. And the American government is trying to shift control of Citgo into the hands of Juan Guaido. So Citgo has stopped sending payments to PDVSA, and Guaido has appointed a new board to the company. Some Venezuelan employees working at Citgo in the U.S. have gone back to Caracas. Basically, the U.S. government just stole Citgo. There's really no other way to say that. They stole Citgo. They said, here, we're going to give it to our buddy Juan Guaido. All right, let's take a phone call. Robert in California. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Mike. How are you?
I'm fine.
Oh, good. I hope the wife is doing well.
She's doing much better. Thank you.
Oh, good. Good. You know, you brought up Venezuela. I just couldn't help but react.
Yes.
Okay, dead silence. Well, okay. How about this, like, Guaido guy? Guaido. If I'm not recalling incorrectly, we had an election down there that Jimmy Carter even, stood there on the seat of, and, well, I mean, observing it. And
yes.
If I don't recall, it was one of the most legal elections available to us, blah, blah, blah. So what's Guaido doing there?
Well, Guaido is the front man for a U.S. effort to take control of Venezuela, to control its oil. It's got the largest known oil reserves on Earth. And the United States wants to, first of all, have access to that oil, but more importantly, decide what currency that oil would be traded for.
Okay, I suppose you're saying all that for the listeners because you and I probably are already very clear about that, but what about the meaning behind this? What does this mean? When we're looking at the politics involved, when you look at the placement of Guaido, and you look at the players behind it, what does that mean? What are we going for here? Our country, our government, not us, we the people, but the government. What are they going for here? What are they trying to achieve?
control. They want control of Venezuela. They have been lusting for control of Venezuela for decades now. I mean, they tried to get Hugo Chavez out. They succeeded for a grand total of 2 days, and now they're trying it again.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right. It seems to be pretty plain there. I was looking for some hidden meaning, but I guess sometimes Occam's razor really does apply, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. So in other news, what do you think about this whole implosion of American society? I know we've got a lot of problems going on overseas, but if you want to take a look closer to home, don't you think we've got some major problems here lately? I mean, things we didn't even... there are some things here that we're looking at we didn't even have to contemplate last year. I mean, and that last year was kind of short-lived. It went by quick. This year's going by fast already, too. What are we going to do about what we see here?
Well, I'm not really sure. I'm hoping we're reaching a point where the American people are just going to say, oh, this is just a load of nonsense, and they're going to stop paying attention to all this transgenderism and all this other nonsense that's going on, coming out of the left, because it really is, it's a load of nonsense. And people, I hope, are getting fed up with it.
Yeah, how do you like our princess up there with her 48 double D eyeballs telling us how cow farts are going to kill us in 12 years? Oh, my God, man.
Then she gets photographed eating a hamburger.
Crazy. This whole country has gone crazy. Yeah, I love her hamburgers. She should have put cheese on it.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, there's also the issue of human flatulence. Are they going to start taxing us, for passing wind?
Only in metropolitan areas. But, to get off the humor and get back to reality, Mike, we do have a serious problem here. And, there's one thing that I've brought up a few times on this or that radio show, and I've yet to get a good, solid answer on it. I know what the problems are. A lot of us understand very, very plainly what the problems are at this point, and we're not understanding what is happening or why it's happening. We got that. We're wondering what we can really do about it as a populace. So do you have any advice on that? How can the
my
common
advice
man
is the same it's always been. Talk to each other.
react?
My advice is the same as always. Talk to each other and just say, look, this stuff is ridiculous. This question about what bathrooms to use is ridiculous. Human-caused global warming is ridiculous. I mean, there's another major storm hitting the New England area right now. Just say, corporate media is lying to us to get us to go along with a bunch of stuff. The left is trying to divide us into smaller and smaller subgroups in order to exploit us for our votes and their political power.
Well, I understand with you. Okay, that's a great idea if you're sitting in Missouri, the Show Me State, but I don't know if you remember this, but I'm calling in from California, right?
Yes.
Okay, have you seen my neighbors lately? I've tried to talk to them. These people are completely fluoridated. Most of them don't know the up from the down, and I'm trying to keep it family-friendly here, but we all know what I really mean. And, they've just got... They've got a cranial cork stuck somewhere it's not supposed to be, and there's no getting through to them.
Well, I understand that California is very liberal. I used to live there myself, but I know that there are some conservatives, and I think you just need to sort of keep an eye out for them, and like attracts like, and just when you talk to people, if they're hardcore liberal, just let them go, take them off your friends list. And just try and build a group of conservatives around you where you can talk about these things. I know there's some in there in California.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm one of them, and I'm sitting here listening to your show, so it proves positive that I'm actually kind of awake, at least slightly. But, when it comes down to it, Mike, gosh, how do I even wrap my head around? I need some duct tape to really just press my head back into place trying to deal with all this. But Okay, when you look at the reality of the situation, a lot of people that I speak to that are on the same level as you or I, we're all sitting around wondering what we're supposed to do about this. I mean, the government has gotten out of control. It's way too powerful. There's really very little we can do to react in an appropriate, quote-unquote, way that we can establish some kind of change. And at the same time, we're looking around at our communities and realizing, well, okay, and I know in other states it may be a much different ratio, but here in California, you're looking at maybe 20% of the people who are awake and like 80% of the people who are willing to yell you right up your driveway and into your house because they don't like hearing what you're saying. The cops aren't going to do anything about it. I've talked to them too. They don't. A lot of them are asleep at the wheel.
Yes.
And it's a sad scenario. This is a really dismal reality we're looking at. Now, I don't want to bring this kind of bad news to your attention. I was hoping that maybe I could make your day better, and especially for a Monday. Oh, God, lonely Mondays.
Well, first of all, the police aren't supposed to get involved in political discussions anyway. That's not their job. But 20%, that's not bad. And that's the 20% you need to reach on out to and just start talking to them. And most importantly, let them know they are not alone, because that's what they're feeling right now.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do. We do. Believe me, we talk. No, I mean, there is a communication availability here that is not being publicized, but it's here. It's here. The only problem is that we see a lot of really fluoridated people, and like I said, again, I'm going to keep it family friendly. There are a whole lot of adjectives that I would like to use to describe these people that are just not, kid friendly, but it is what it is. And we're living in a time right now where, I mean, we can all talk about what's going wrong and how it went wrong and what it means and
Yes.
who was motivated to do what behind it, but we still really need to get down to one simple conclusion, and that is, what can we do about it right now that's not just going to, spread the wealth of information, but try to institute a real logistical change, because we don't have a whole lot of time left.
No, I think we're definitely coming up on a major upheaval in our economy and our society. And I think the conservatives have got a good grasp on what's going to happen. And I think the liberals are basically going to be standing there wondering just what the heck went wrong, because they had this fairy tale utopia that they believed in that's about to blow up in their faces.
You're absolutely right. No, the liberals are going to be sitting there looking at their fairy tale utopia, wondering what the heck went wrong. But on the other side of the coin, the real logistic reality of this is that we're going to have a lot of conservatives sitting on the other side of the coin wondering what to do about it. Our educational system has not provided us with a good solution for what is occurring here.
No,
if you look at the past 25 years, there are a lot of people who are so thoroughly unprepared right now. We need some good advice.
Yeah, we do. What we need is some common sense, and that's something that does seem to have been taken out of our society.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, I hate to, be so dismal about this, but, I'm just looking at the reality of what's going on. Anyway, Mike, I really appreciate your radio show. Believe me, I've been listening to you for a long time, and I've called in a few times. There were a couple of times you seemed a little agitated with me because I wasn't keeping on point, and there were a few other times where you seemed to really appreciate what it had to say. But I hope at least today that you and your Claire, you're having a great day and everything is going well, and I'm going to let you go. But in the meantime, let's all reflect on this. We need to understand what to do about what's going on, not just why it's going on.
Okay, well, Robert, thank you for the call. We got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We got another caller on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here to Terry in California. Terry, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I'm going to have to change the subject from what I told Mike just very slightly. after that last caller.
Yeah.
United we stand, divided we fall. That used to be the motto of our country. And there is a distinct effort in this country, there has been over the last 50 years, to promote divided we fall. And a good example of that is the immigration, the new immigration law that was pushed through by the Zionists in the mid-1960s, 65 to 67. Jacob Javits, Frank Lautenberg, and some more into Congress. They pushed that law through because they wanted to divide the country. They wanted to, we were unified before that. And they wanted to get rid of that unity, bring in the division, and then we have all these problems like the last caller was pointing out. And California is not the only state like that. I mean, you know, like you mentioned before, people from foreign countries do not have the spirit of America to go fight the wars. You mentioned that, and that's correct. Mm-hmm. And that's expanded to everything. You know, we're a divided country right now. We can't convert all these people that they bring in. Every year they're bringing 1 million people legally. I know you're against illegal immigration. I am too. But the legal immigration is just as bad. Not quite as bad, but almost as bad. And when it comes to the unity of our country and the division among the people. So, you know, that's my point today. But, you know, you're talking about Venezuela, and maybe I should call Pat Robertson and what he thinks that we ought to do about Maduro. But we should do the same thing he recommended to do about Chavez. You know, what would Jesus do? And his point was that we should knock him off, if you remember that.
Yeah. Well,
but back to the point. United we stand, divided we fall, and I'm afraid we're divided.
Well, we're divided not just because of the immigration issue, but because that's a policy of the Democratic Party. They like to divide people up into subgroups, you know, transgender, gay, pro-abortion, whatever, in order to have these smaller groups that they can win over as part of their coalition, if you will, to maintain their electoral advantage. But it is, in fact, dividing the country, and it's leading to a tremendous amount of domestic friction. So that's a big part of the problem. I think we're not for the Democrats playing the politics of identity, that the legal immigrants would not really be an issue.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around a group that wants power so bad they're willing to sacrifice the whole country and destroy the whole country just so they can have the power in this country. And when they do it, what are they presiding over? A destroyed country. That's what I don't understand.
Well, yeah, again, go back to your Milton. It's better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven.
All right, Mike, that's all I wanted to say. Appreciate the show, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Charles in St. Petersburg, Florida. Aloha, Charles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I don't know if Trump is even going to get his emergency power with all the things I read on the internet. It's just rhinos are obstructing, and of course all the Democrats are just obstructing everything. You know, they don't want him to have any emergency powers, nothing, you know, to build a wall, nothing. Oh, we can't do that. And I just want to point that out. They need people need to contact their people in Congress and the House and Senate. They're just so many of these rhinos are. I think even Mitch McConnell. I'm very suspicious of him. Another rhino in my book.
Well, I'm not even sure Congress has the right to interfere with a presidential declaration of a national emergency. And as far as the rhinos are concerned, you know, they need to understand that if this country is flooded with illegal immigrants, those illegal immigrants are all going to be voting Democrat, and they could find themselves out of a job next election.
God, I hope so. God, they might as well just pull whatever for the Democratic Party, because the vote for these rhino Republicans are just that they're voting for obstruction.
Yeah.
Anyway, another thing, I'm having problems with telephones. I don't know if you have problems, but I can't even out information here without encountering a computer that can't understand English. I call up
some of those voice
companies like
recognition
Fidelity
systems are not good. Listen, Charles, I'm going to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Charles in St. Petersburg. And Charles, you had something else you wanted to share with us.
Oh, yeah. Well, if we're going to have automation, Ivanka Trump is bringing this up. We've got to prepare for it. I'm sorry. Call me a Luddite, but I don't want to talk to robots that can't understand plain English. I call up Fidelity Investment, and I wait on an hour on the line there, and I talk to a robot and it can't understand me. I punch in my Social Security number. It can't understand it. I'm just sick of this. If these computers or robots are going to be driving trucks and cars around in our highways, I'm sorry for everybody. They can't even communicate over a telephone line. This is the great plan of America's corporate technocrats. The robots can't even understand English.
Well, the problem is that
Spanish, I guess.
The problem is that all of these technologies get that they can't get
the rest of the world. The United States supposedly has a vast oil supply, but I don't think that'll be enough. They've got to get hold of Venezuela if they want to attack Iran. In my book,
that's a good insight. That's a very good insight. I mean, the United States was trying experiments with deep oil drilling, which is what led to the Deepwater Horizon disaster. And maybe you could very well be right. The idea is that the United States is going to use Venezuela's oil to keep the rest of the world supplied while they go after Iran.
Yeah, well, just something to think about. I don't know. Just my view.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. The phone lines are open. And getting on back to the news here, a Russian official is saying Moscow will do all it can to prevent potential intervention in Venezuela by the United States, which has not ruled out the military option to overthrow the elected government of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And Valentina Matviyenko, the chairperson of Russia's Federation Council, which is the upper house of the Russia legislature, made the comment at a meeting with Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez in Moscow on Sunday. So what we're looking at here is another Venezuela situation. Russia will come on in and they will provide military assistance to Venezuela and wear the United States down in a war of attrition, which the United States really is not able to endure at this point. And so it's going to be another failed policy here. So the Russian Prime Minister, Dmitry Medvedev, is out there saying that Moscow is in fact monitoring talks of a U.S. military intervention in Venezuela. It does look like the United States is just thinking about just invading. No dialogue, no nothing, just, we don't like you, get out. We don't care if you were elected, get out. We're going to put in this guy who wasn't elected. Okay. Now, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton was doing an interview on CNN, and basically Bolton was out there talking about getting rid of the Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. And the CNN host, Jake Tapper, said, well, what about U.S. support for other known dictatorships around the world, like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And Bolton, of course, dodged those questions, and I guess his attitude is, well, those are good dictators because they're on our side, and Maduro's a bad dictator, even though he was elected, because he won't do what we tell him to do. And again, talking about the Monroe Doctrine, that this hemisphere belongs to the United States of America to do with what it will. We're going to take another phone call. Mike in Kentucky, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, the guy just called in talking about calling his investment broker or whatever, and over an unsecure phone line, punching in his Social Security number. I'm thinking, this is a little bit of a dichotomy. He's not confident in the robots, but yet he's punching in a crucial piece of identity there that over an unsecure phone network. I don't think that's the best way to do it. I believe I'd try to get a hold of another identifier to use, like maybe some kind of an account number or something that would be in the house. I don't think that's very smart. I mean, I've dealt with 22 years of silliness with the phones around here. I'm over in the digital divide of eastern Kentucky, and a lot of rural counties now have phone fiber optic going all the way to their phone jack. Of course, the connections are throttled.
Yes.
But there's in my area, in a fairly large regional university town, we can't get that. It's just kind of, it's a little bit weird that, you drive 30 miles into a rural county and get fiber optic all the way to your phone jack. But some of us can't call, between different phone companies without, getting problems going full duplex where they can't hear you, and they can hear, one side can hear each other, but the other side can't. And
yeah.
of course, you may have heard me talk about the situations where people turned off cell phones, call in or lock up our lines, and I can hear everything going on. The county emergency management director here in our county, his mom was involved in a gossip circle, and I didn't recognize the phone number at first. It was somebody I knew, and I could hear everything they were talking about, and I couldn't hang up on the phone call for like over 14 minutes. And when I called the guy's phone back and gave him a voicemail message and said, hey, this is exactly what I've tried to tell you about before, and your phone just did it. And it was a new phone, and he didn't know how to use it. So this lady next to him saw it light up and says, hey, you got a phone call, you got a voicemail. And he goes, I don't know how to answer voicemail. So she swipes and taps and turns it, puts it on speakerphone for this whole crowd to hear, including this emergency management director, mom. And they said, what I told him, I said, I'll post this up on Facebook for your housing director to hear so that he can know that you didn't do this on purpose. And that crowd of women just went crazy and said, that's going to be the end of your TV station if you do that. I said, well, I have every journalistic responsibility to tell people that their phones are not off when they think they are, and that the stuff that they're talking about can be thrown out into this Prism, Thin Thread, or whatever, Bill Benny network that he got mad about and resigned over. And they're overwhelming our intelligence community to where they can't find the needles in the haystack because they want to suck it all up. The prime example is, you remember the guy that showed up at the baseball practice and said, is this the Republicans? And started shooting? Yeah. The next day, the news media had every communication that he had ever done with Congress. Of course, some of it was redacted. But in less than 24 hours, the hashtag XKeyscore, if anybody wants to research that, the Google for everything you've done, probably for 15 or 20 years on every individual, is categorized, graphed, collated, and it's all stored in places like Bluffdale. They've sacrificed a 36-hole golf course on Fort Meade to build another huge facility. San Antonio soon is going to be online. Each one of these facilities can store up to 100 years of the entire world's communications. I think a lot of people don't understand the scale of the situation. So I wouldn't be typing in my Social Security number just to talk to my investment broker, especially if you don't have any confidence in the robots.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. But, you raise an interesting point. They're grabbing so much information, whether they can make any sense of it or not is the big issue. Because adding data to a collection is linear, but the correlation among that data is an unlimited expansion. And frankly, I think the reason that they haven't really accomplished much with any of this data is that they can't make heads or tail of it, that there's simply too much of it, that there is no computer powerful enough to go through it all and analyze it and look for things like terrorism.
Well, and the Monday morning quarterbacking, of course, they can do like they did with the guy that shot up the baseball game or practice for the Republicans. I mean, they can go back and after the fact, they can filter and look for stuff and try to develop models for predicting that kind of stuff. But man, that's dangerous. Do you trust them to do that? I don't think so.
I don't, because the models are very often wildly inaccurate. They're overbroad. And we know that these systems have generated huge numbers of false positives when they've been, people who are perfectly innocent of any wrongdoing are being wrongfully accused by these computer systems.
It leaves the networks wide open for exploitation, blackmail, and use your imagination. But the estimates are that it's something like one human analyst, for every 200,000 people that they are slurping up data on. 2015, National Geographic had a big article with the issue had a big pot leaf on the front of it, but open it up to the centerfold, there's a diagram of the entire world's fiber optic networks. Vast majority of it's being bottlenecked through America. Down at the bottom is a little footnote that says all of the world's phone data adds up to less than 1% of the data going across those networks. That's why Bluffdale has to be so huge. There is no network security. You've got, and I talked to a fiber optic technician about this. I said, well, how many times can a fiber signal be split? And he was real vague about it. He said, well, it depends on the power of the card. But you can split it until you get signal degradation. And I said, well, and I told him about, he had never heard of Mark Klein in room 641, whatever it was, 641A. There's a Wikipedia article about it. I said, look that up. And I said, now, when you split off using these Prism cards, you split off a fiber feed, that's not just one way. So if you're going into a secret splitter room and off into the spooks, and William Benny says there's like 9 countries besides the Five Eyes, and the Mossad gets a copy of everything, stuff that probably the FBI can't even see, because the Naris devices were developed by them and, quote, sold to Boeing. So those, they're getting a copy of everything. And when you split it off into that netherworld, it's two-way. They backhaul signals back into the network so they can mess with anybody.
Yes.
And screw with. So, I mean, there's no. That's the big elephant in the room, and that's I believe a tech sector bubble that they're inflating. This 5G thing is, multi-channel news described it as 25% tech and 75% hype, and that was the December issue from a broadcast or cable industry magazine. If people want to look it up, I think I found a copy of it online, but you have to be an industry subscriber to even read it. But they're just inflating another tech sector bubble, and when they're ready, they'll pop it. And everybody with the golden parachutes is going to do just fine. But the rest of your pensions and stuff that are heavily invested in that are going to go in the toilet. So I wouldn't recommend tech sector stocks for anytime soon, unless you've got inside information. Whatever that guy's talking about investing in, I use it. I don't think, and it's just another tax, right? You got to go get that credit protection plan. It's like another tax to protect your credit from getting stolen because of there's no data security. I don't know. It's just a wonderful mess, And
it is a bit of a mess, and again, it's a rush to keep profits up by corporations by going to automation. It's a rush to get these technologies out there in the marketplace before they're really, really robust and reliable, and we get to deal with the shortcomings as a result of that. Somebody just emailed me and said there's a website called gethuman.com, and it's a website that gives users the shortcut to speak to a human customer representative for most companies. So if you want to get past those automated phone systems, gethuman.com.
Nice to have a solution. Now I'm going to check that one out because I have the same problem with whatever, phone, cable, any of that. One of the shortcuts that I've heard about that works for some companies is they do voice print or voice content recognition, so you can, once you get past the initial menu, just start saying, cancel my account, and it recognizes your speech and will send you straight through all the myriad of menus to talk to a human. Just cancel my account.
Some will, some won't. You know, basically what I do when I get one of those voice recognition systems is I'll just press and hold the O button, and that will shortcut you to a human operator in a lot of these installations.
Hopefully. Yeah. Well, good talking to you, man.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And the phone lines are open here. All right. Thousands of Venezuelans are defying the blockade to flood across the border into Colombia. And Guido is calling for nationwide protests. So we're going to take another break for commercials here. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, over in Iran, they are understandably gloating over the fact they're able to take control over U.S. drones flying over Syria and Iraq and extract firsthand information from them. And I'm sure this is probably making the U.S. military very upset that the security on these drone communication systems isn't all that good. And I'm sure Iran enjoyed it even more when they were able to force one of the drones to land in the desert, and that required the U.S. to blow it up before anybody could get their hands on it. And they're basically saying that you need to look at this and realize that the myth of American military power is exactly that. It's a myth. They got a lot of toys, a lot of high-tech stuff, but it's all weak and it's all vulnerable and it's all wide open. Okay, up in Canada, detained Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou is claiming that Canada subjected her to detention, interrogation, and search without telling her she was under arrest, and she's now suing Canada for a breach of her constitutional rights. And she's filed a lawsuit against Canadian officials, claiming her constitutional rights were violated during the arrest, and basically is stating that under the guise of a routine border check, they unlawfully subjected Meng to detention, search, and interrogation to extract evidence from her before she was arrested and provided her rights under the charter. So it looks like Canada did a procedural mistake that may in fact lead to the unraveling of their entire case against her, which of course would lead to the unraveling of the extradition request to the United States as well. Over in Saudi Arabia, a gentleman named Walid Fitahi, American citizen, was dragged from his hotel room in Riyadh's Ritz-Carlton Hotel and was stripped to his underwear, bound to a chair, and tortured. Now, this guy is a doctor. He went to Harvard. He was shocked with electricity, and they tortured him for about an hour, and he was whipped so severely he could not sleep on his back for days. So these are our good friends over there in Saudi Arabia and how they treat Americans. Just in case any of you were thinking of visiting Saudi Arabia, and I don't know about you, but I really wasn't here. Over in France, the Yellow Vest protests raged across France for the 16th straight week, which puts a lie to that article we talked about last week. Where they said, well, that anti-Semitic act, that's the end of the protest. No, it isn't. And apparently the police brutality is escalating. Yellow vests are being pepper sprayed. Guy was in a wheelchair, was pepper sprayed by the police. Another man was literally shot in the face. And so this Friday call for calm by Macron apparently doesn't apply to the French police. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And it looks like the entire world is really starting to get into this revolutionary spirit, if you will. Over in Montenegro, thousands were protesting in their capital. It's like the fourth rally in as many weeks, demanding that President Milo Djukanovic and his government resign over alleged corruption, cronyism, and abuse of power. And basically, protesters in the thousands marched through the center of the city charging Milo thief, Milo thief, Milo thief. And even the opposition politicians have distanced themselves from the protest. And it gets back to something I said a while back, that this push for a global government was creating a political climate leading to global revolution. Apparently, over in Greece, protesters were outside the Turkish consulate throwing Molotov cocktails at it, and the Greek police got involved, and there was a violent confrontation there as well. Meanwhile, down in Africa, Rwanda is deploying their army along the border with Uganda amid the standoff between those two countries as well. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Jim in Providence, Rhode Island. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I discovered your show 3-4 years ago, and it really gave me a lot of great insight. And at the end of my call, if you could please give the listeners a reminder as to where to send contributions, I would like to send something to your show, because we listen to it, we might put it off. A lot of us don't make a lot of money, but what we need is to hear the voice of reason. And my call has to do with Elizabeth Warren, and I'm a Massachusetts native. And my nickname for her is Jokahontas.
Yes.
She's a joke. She's a joke. And if I looked up, I posted on my Facebook page a video, and no one actually liked it or commented on it. I couldn't believe it. It was about Suze Orman, who used to be a financial so-called guru, and she set up, kind of a network, and she ripped a lot of people off, basically. And the videos that are on YouTube for now, hopefully they're not going to be ripped off out there as Warren might gain more steam. But as long as you look into her involvement with Suze Orman and look at the bald-faced liar backing her and ripping a lot of people off, I think it should end right there. I mean, this woman can not, if she's basically doing like a TV ripoff and cheating people out of money and, backing this person publicly, probably doesn't want to, you probably don't want her as your president, male or female. I don't care, if we have a male or female president, but this, Elizabeth Warren is very stinky, kind of involvement with Suze Orman, who was a so-called financial advisor. Okay. And I just found that to be, something that's not known to a lot of people. And I actually discovered it by accident, and I was, even more disgusted with Warren than I already was when I found these videos that are on YouTube. If you look up Suze Orman and Elizabeth Warren as her attorney, it's kind of crazy that this person's running for president. And, I'm not trying to drag anybody's name through the mud, but I mean, it's very well documented that this person was kind of a charlatan, if you would. And the lawyer backing her wants to run for the Oval Office. So I never got any reaction from anyone when I posted that video. I was very surprised, and I really think that if it was researched further, if you look into Elizabeth Warren's backing of Susie Orman, and what the trail of tears that she left. It would really be, are you frigging kidding me? This this person be running for office who backs this kind of plan. So really all I have, and I think you have an outstanding show, and I really appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words here. And I don't think Elizabeth Warren really has a chance at the nomination, mostly because of the, as you put it, Pocahontas issue. She's not going to be able to get rid of that between now and 2020, the fact that she lied about her Native American ancestry here. As far as donations to Republic Broadcasting, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer, anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. And, of course, if you want to donate to whatreallyhappened.com, which is this particular radio show, you go to the website, whatreallyhappened.com, and up at the top, there's a little white strip of permanent links. And over at the far right, it says donate. There's also a donate button in the right margin as well. And you can click that, make a PayPal donation. And again, there's no such thing as too small of a donation. Every little tiny bit helps.
I was gonna put it to an analogy, like if I had a bad restaurant experience the other week and I wasted $35 of my time and my money, and I wish I'd actually just stayed home and cooked craft dinner and gave you a donation.
Well, again, if you click that donate button at my website, there's a postal address in there for those who want to send a check, money order, or cash. And
if anyone wants to Google Suze Orman and Elizabeth Warren,
yep,
that's a big eye opener.
I will definitely do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Have a great one.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, and we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Okay, over in Russia, they have formally pulled out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty after signaling it would take the historic step after the White House announced last month the U.S. would suspend all obligations under the treaty. Basically, the United States has pulled out of all the arms control treaties they had with Russia. I think there's only one of them left. And probably that's going to go very shortly as well, and we're going to be back in the throes of a new Cold War, huge amounts of money, very dangerous weapons, a very dangerous world. And the INF treaty was set to expire in less than 6 months, and it's the subject of heightened tensions, both sides repeatedly accusing the other of having been in violation of its terms for years. Over in Israel, the Great March of Return is continuing. They're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. This last weekend was the 49th Friday of the Great March of Return. So 3 more weeks and it'll be the 1-year anniversary. Israeli forces wounded 83 civilians, including 23 children, women, 3 paramedics, and a journalist. And it is clear they are targeting those journalists. They're trying to keep the world's reporters from showing up and covering what's going on there. Because the optics on it are really bad, and the Gazans are not showing any signs of quitting after almost a year, and Israel is not showing any signs of backing off on the blockade. They just don't want anybody talking about it, because if you talk about how Israel treats the Palestinians, well, by golly, you must be an anti-Semite. That's what you are. You're a Jew-hating anti-Semite. And we're going to make sure your career is destroyed. Okay, we're going to take another phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. What's up? We were talking about Venezuela before. Do you think Trump is actually, he actually has to be stupid. If he thinks he can get us into a war, involved in a war there, I mean, the original invasion might be fairly easy, like it was with Iraq. I mean, nothing's easy. I mean, you're still going to lose men. But the thing is this, then comes the occupation, trying to take over their oil fields, then comes the guerrilla war. Then one American body bag after another is going to start coming back. Plus, boys going to come back without body parts, and on top of that, they're going to come out all messed up emotionally. And one of the reasons they're going to come back emotionally because they know it's wrong. I think the soldiers realize a lot of these wars are wrong, and it starts bothering their conscience as well as anything else.
Yes,
because Americans are not, really not like that. We're not Nazi Germany. So I just don't think, I just don't understand what's going on with the man's head. Does he actually think he can get away with this, and he's going to win re-election? He'll go down in flames. His presidency is going to go down in flames as one of the worst ever. He'll be right up there with W. Bush, maybe even worse, considered worse by history. And eventually, we're going to get out of there anyway. It's not going to work. It's basically a war of greed, basically wanting, setting sights on their oil. Maduro is elected constitutionally by the Venezuela Constitution. This guy Guaido should be arrested. He's a fraud. He's not only a fraud; he's committing treason against his own country.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. Is Trump really that stupid, Mike? Do you actually think he's that dumb that he's going to do something like this? I mean, knowing the election is 2 years away now.
Well, and, I think the war in Venezuela was planned before Trump was even elected, and he's just going along with the agenda. But I think this whole war against the rest of the world goes all the way back to the 1990s and the Project for the New American Century. But because public opposition is starting to build, they're starting to accelerate the agenda. They're trying to get things going quicker and try and get it all done before the American people finally rise up and demand an end to all of this.
Well, Tina came before 9/11. Well, obviously, I think it was not only predicted, they knew 9/11 was coming, but it was before people really got into the internet the way they are today. I mean, the internet was still something very new, and it was, people were not able to pass around information the way they are today. They're not going to get away with this time. American people are not that stupid anymore. We know we're false flags, and most people don't get their news watching from the mainstream media or the corporate media, whatever you want to call them. They really better, he really better start thinking about it. Trump, he's got to get rid of those neocons that are advising him. He's got to get rid of Bolton, Pompeo. Guy Abrams belongs in jail. Really, I mean, he shouldn't be walking around a free man. And he's got to start getting people that really understand what's going on in the world today. I don't think he understands. I think the man is serious problems as far as. I don't know, he's not stupid, but he certainly doesn't understand the way of the world. He doesn't understand, this is not business. He's not making a business deal to put up a real estate project of some kind. This is the real world. And you better get it through his head. And the people who apologize for him, they're not doing any good. The people who go, oh, he's playing 4D chess, he's doing this, he's doing that. QAnon says everything's going to be good. We're working on arresting all the child molesters in the world and whatever else. That's not going to get it. Nobody's going to buy that either. Well, people are buying it, but I certainly don't. There is no QAnon. It's all nonsense. If anything, it's probably somebody in the CIA playing, or a few people in the CIA playing games. This is a real world.
I agree.
This is 4D chess. This is stupidity. That's all it is. The man doesn't know what he's doing, right? You even look at him; he doesn't seem to know what he's doing. All these speeches, if you notice, he doesn't even mention much about the wars when he gives these speeches. Like I get what is a CPAC, or when he goes around the country. It's not that or even when he tweets, he doesn't tweet. He doesn't brag much about these wars. So. Maybe he does understand. Maybe he's being threatened. Maybe he's being blackmailed. I don't know. You tell me, Mike, because I can't figure it out.
Well, I got to tell you, at this point, it almost seems like he's resigned to being a one-term president because he doesn't seem all that concerned about keeping his promises to the American people that he made when he campaigned. And at this point, yeah, he's a one-term president. And I think that's why Hillary Clinton is thinking about stepping back in 2020, is she knows it's going to be very easy to defeat him.
She has no chance. Hillary Clinton has no chance. I really believe, I know they're going to do everything. They're already doing everything they can to stop her. I really believe your congresswoman there from Hawaii is going to be the next president of the United States when the smoke clears, because people are not that stupid anymore. We're not going to let them, try to bury her under a rug or attack her as being, a friend of a Russian bot or whatever other nonsense they say. People know better. I think she's got the message. The woman is very articulate. She's not a joke like the airhead there. What's her name? Cortez or whatever. Cortez. Yeah. She's not. She sounds like a dumb valley girl, and that's basically what she is. So the valley she's from is in the other side of the coast, on the other side of the continent. But the fact of the matter is, she looks and acts like what she is, a dumb, an airhead. But Tulsi's real. She's very well
but
spoken.
she's also anti-war, and that's why she'll never be allowed near the nomination. And I know she stepped on in, but you've got the entire military-industrial complex is going to be working against her.
Well, I think that can be overcome, but we got to get together and make sure that happens. I'm trying my best. I'm passing the word around. I'm constantly putting stories, putting her stuff on Facebook, Twitter, getting other facts from people like Tom Walongo, who's now pretty much a supporter, even though he himself is a libertarian. They're not going to. I really don't think they're going to get away with it this time. They've gotten away with it before. They got away with what they did to Ron Paul, and to a degree, what they did to Bernie Sanders. It's not happening this time. I really don't think it's going to happen.
I certainly hope you're right. I certainly hope you're right. But between the crooked election machines and the flood of illegal immigrants, Hillary is already replaying the 2016 campaign.
But nobody wants her. There's no way this woman's going to win. She's hated by everybody, left, right, center. Nobody wants her. Could you imagine her trying to debate Tulsi Gabbard? It would be ridiculous. I mean, the woman has, she's zero, she's zero credibility. She's not a personality-wise. She's not even like her husband personality-wise. He had a personality. She does. The woman is, I really don't think she's even going to bother stepping back in. I think the others on the stand now, they're going to try to stop her. They're all gang up. I don't think it's going to work. I think either Bernie or Tulsi is going to get it, and I think it's more likely going to be Tulsi, because I think people are going to realize Bernie's just too old. He's too much. He doesn't think up to date. I think people are going to turn to her. And plus,
I'd love to see Tulsi be the Democratic nominee in 2020. I don't think it's going to happen because of her anti-war stance. There are just too many people who are not going to want to see that happen. Anyway, Mark, got to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Carrie in Philadelphia. Aloha, Carrie. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, first off, I'd like to express my gratitude for your valiant efforts. I really do appreciate it. And I'd like to propose a solution to many of the problems discussed here on your program. And that solution is community broadband. And I propose that people research this through muninetworks.org. It has many resources. All the ingredients to our solution is staring us all in the face. They let the genie out of the bottle when they gave the internet to the public. It's very easy to take common off-the-shelf networking equipment and form a intranet in your community and also connect it to the internet. And if you have said intranet, it would mitigate any type of kill switch that they try to, squelch our efforts. One of the biggest challenges of doing that is getting your upstream provider, to the internet. But other than that, there's no laws or regulations that says that I cannot connect the wire to my neighbor's house.
Okay, Carrie.
As long as we both agree to it.
Carrie?
Yes.
Okay, gotta put you on hold. Do not hang up. I want to come back to you after these few words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Carrie in Philadelphia. And Carrie, there are a lot of communities who have already done what you're suggesting, where the city councils will set up, a town-wide internet as a public service as opposed to having a private company. And I remember when I was in San Francisco working on The Day After Tomorrow, I caught wind of a project where these volunteers had put together a network of Wi-Fi hotspots all over the poorer communities so that school kids would have access to broadband to do their homework, even if they didn't have broadband coming into their home. So it can be done. The only limiting factors are, of course, the upstream bandwidth coming into the system as a whole, which obviously has to support the entire intranet. And your talk of a kill switch, well, the kill switches could be, upstream of that whole situation. But it is certainly technically doable, and communities are starting to do that.
Yes, and that's why I, suggested like a out-of-band intranet, so that the communities can communicate with themselves if that type of scenario were to manifest. There's so many resources for people to do this. Another limiting factor is many of these states are what's known as red states, where they've actually lobbied, the incumbents have actually lobbied to make said efforts illegal. To which I say that, if you're in one of those states, you could simply form a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, between your neighbors. Use something like Kickstarter to fund it off. That way nobody loses any money if it doesn't get off the ground. The ideas are right there in front of us. I just think we need to be more solution-oriented in our efforts rather than complaining about what's already obvious of the problems, So anyway, I can't emphasize enough. I firmly believe that the actual battlegrounds in this hidden world war that we are actually in, it is information, and the information medium of today is the internet. There's no doubt.
No doubt about it.
But yeah, so I mean, there's open source software to help you with all these efforts, and more and more, there's actually open source hardware solutions coming out, open source processors coming out. And the problem of the upstream, if we gain enough momentum and connect and have peering agreements between community networks, we will actually build our own out-of-band intranet that would be immune from the monopolists and the incumbents.
Well, that certainly was the intent of the original ARPANET. The big problem is that these large social media companies have been set up and have kind of lured everybody into depending on them for their communication, which is to the detriment of the community because now they're imposing censorship.
Well, again, folks like you and everybody else on RBN and similar, I commend your efforts. Very grateful. I would just want to reemphasize, if people are interested in this, the best resource to just get an overall picture of where this is right now is muninetworks.org. It has the map of the red states versus the blue states, and can provide you with many resources and give you, like you said, many actual examples of working solutions out there right now. So, again, thank you, Mike, and I wish you the best.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and we still have callers on the line, but we are coming up on another commercial break, so I'm going to hold the callers off until after we get back. Over in Tel Aviv, there was apparently a major demonstration at the Habima Square calling on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to step down. So there are a lot of people who think he's had enough time in office. He's certainly been a colorful character, to put it delicately, with his cartoon bombs over there at the United Nations here. Iran is basically rejecting any outside interference on their missile capability, saying that their defense program is based on its national interest and proportionate to their threats. And Iran takes no country's consultation into consideration and never asks for any country's permission when it comes to the range, the destruction power, precision, or preparation time as four decisive factors when setting up its missile policies. This has come from Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, basically saying that their missiles are defensive, they face existential threats, and they're not going to let anybody take those missiles away, which is what Trump wants to do. We're going to take another break for commercials, back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I don't know if you talked about this Friday, about how, well, we know Venezuela has the world's largest reserves of heavy oil, right?
Yes.
Heavy crude. Well, do you know that I think the Koch brothers owns like the refinery to refine it in like Texas?
Yes.
That heavy crude. Yeah, so like, and Mike Pompeo is supposed to be one of their prodigies. So what we're doing and trying to do in Venezuela to put a puppet in, it's already been done here years ago.
Yes.
You know, it's sad. It's basically a small group of people like the mafia running the West.
Yes.
And if you look at what's going on in France with Macron, he ain't going to step down. Doesn't matter if the whole country's protesting against him. You know, he'll send out his military police or do whatever. And the same with, look at Justin Trudeau. They kidnapped the owner of Huawei's daughter because of economic reasons. That's it. And now he's in hot water because of the scandal with the Attorney General over. I mean, and they don't care, Mike. You know, that's what I'm like seeing. They just don't. They don't care. Like they think they're untouchable. You know, how do you fight against that when they control the media? You know, at this point.
Well, they may control the media, but the media is not controlling the people anymore. Public confidence in the media is at record low. The public is coming to hear on the internet, social media, the independent media. That's where they're getting their news now.
I just don't. I mean, I don't know what else can we all do. You know, like we tell people. Yeah, the majority of American people just. I don't know. I try to talk to people. I give up on some of them. It's just they're untaught. You know, you just can't reach a certain group of the population. That's just a fact.
That's true.
You know, people want to live in their bubbles or whatever. But but it goes both ways, Mike. I mean, I lean Democratic for certain issues. You know, I'm against the wars. I'm for like universal health care. You know, I'm against the bailouts of Wall Street. But there's also on the other side, like the caller said, the Rhino. It's just, we look at this as a two-sided battle. It is, but it's globalist versus nationalist. But Trump's a nationalist, but he put in deep state people around him. So, like, my brain spins around. I don't know if yours does, thinking about that. I just don't understand that. Everything he ran on, nothing's going on.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even hear talk about the wall anymore. I heard him talking at CPAC how we're winning, you know, because he loves winning, you know, but I mean, what are we winning, Mike? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, as the American people, what are we winning? These people send us off to their wars, you know, like, what are we winning in the end? You know, they loot us, you know? Not just here, though. I'm talking about
they're
in the
winning
world,
at our expense.
Yeah. Just makes me mad, like, you know, how to get through to more people, you know. But will that make a difference? Like I said, if Macron in France, if the whole country can be, and he still won't leave, like, what do you do at that point, you know? Like, if you control the media and the military or something, you know, because they're corrupted too. Not to say our military men are corrupt, but that group of generals that get lucrative kickbacks and Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
everybody's corrupt, Mike. Like, what institution in our government's not corrupt too? You know, FBI, CIA, NSA. I mean, it's all got their groups of people in there.
Yeah.
You know, like I just don't know what else to do about that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, but and then Mike, real quick, I just want to mention, you know, I was watching the Indian news channel live, and you know what they were talking about? We can't wait till we get those new French Rafale jets. By 2020, they're going to get the first batch, and then by 2026, they'll have 24 of them. So it's all about money and military weaponry, welfare, warfare states around the world. It never ends. You know, it's just the same tricks in everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, including India and Pakistan with their F-16s. I bet you they're saying, "Gee, I can't wait till we get the new model of the F-16." You know, to replace the one that got shot down.
Well, as George Bernard Shaw once said, "There's nothing in man's industry but his greed and his sloth. His heart is in his weapons."
Yeah, that's true. All right, Mike, thanks. Have a good rest of the show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over here to Raleigh in Minnesota. Aloha, Raleigh. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Mike, I know that Bernie Sanders is not your first pick for candidacy in 2020, but I just wanted to touch on bases on the fact that Bernie is swinging and missing hard on the Venezuela issue. It's almost to a certain degree he's drinking the Kool-Aid of the neocons, which is so ironic to me because Bernie Sanders is supposed to be this guy, big socialist, supports the Venezuela socialist regime, but anything is further from the truth. He made a series of tweets on Twitter back in January 4th calling for regime change. I'm not going to read them all, but is it okay if I read one of his tweets real quick, Michael?
Sure, go ahead.
The Maduro government in Venezuela has been waging a violent crackdown on Venezuelan civil society, violated the Constitution by dissolving the National Assembly, and was reelected last year in an election that many observers said was fraudulent. Further, the economy is a disaster and millions are migrating. So he's saying that Maduro himself has dissolved the National Assembly, not that the president of the National Assembly is dissolving him, and the opposition party is allowed to coexist with Maduro's government as well. I mean, they just got elected. I mean, they have passed 0 laws in that country, meaning the opposition party, and they are just there to be the thorn in the spine and be waiting in the bay to take over the government. I don't really see any other point, you know, besides that they were just waiting in the wing to take over.
Yeah, very much so. And this Guido was being, groomed to be the figurehead. And it's, again, it's a classic U.S. regime change operation, except that now we all understand that's exactly what's going on.
Exactly. Brian Dawson does very great work. He did Bernie Sanders' The Woodshed, which I highly recommend. He also did an article that you republished called Bernie Sanders a Warmongering and Economically Illiterate, and it says plus a woodshed. He supported every war from Kosovo to Iraq. He voted for that, Bernie Sanders. He's into the decapitation regimes, and then a democracy is supposed to thrive out of that. And he supported modern rebels, Al-Qaeda fighters. There is no Jefferson democracy that's coming out of anything that goes along with supporting covert, missions. And it really came out. I don't know if you saw the CNN town hall meeting with the plants that were put into place by the DNC to ask Bernie troll questions. And basically say, because the prerequisite right now for all politicians right now is to say that Maduro is a horrible dictator, and he's resisting aid. And Bernie's definitely he's definitely, saying the party line, and he's manufacturing consent for this Venezuela war. And I know that he's read Noam Chomsky before,
Yeah.
And I wonder if he made it some sort of Faustian deal that he could say all his civil stuff about health care just as long as he goes along with the war.
Well, again, from the point of view of the U.S. government, they've gone down this path to reasserting hegemonic domination around the world, and they've gone down that path too far to turn around. If they were to just call it off and quit now, the U.S. economy would implode immediately. And so from their point of view, they're kind of stuck. They don't have a choice but to keep on going until it's either victory or defeat. And ultimately, unfortunately, I think it's going to be defeat.
Yeah, we are a war-based economy. I mean, we have in every 50 states some sort of manufacturer of arms. And if you go hard against war, you're going against the voters. You're against industry in America. That's what we have become. And the idea that Maduro is not accepting aid, it's wrong. He's accepting international aid just from not the United States. And this is just a big PR ploy because we want to send arms. It's the Abrams strategy to send arms under the cover of aid, and it's going to go to militants to cause more chaos inside of that country, and more citizens will die. And the result of that, it's not like they're handing out, they are going to need some more Band-Aids in that country from all the bullets that are going to come into the U.S. aid.
Yeah. They were using the Red Cross logo without permission. The Red Cross complained about that. That alone right there tells you it was all just a put-up job.
Absolutely. And then we all know about the non-usable bridge that they supposedly were waiting on the other side and supposedly desperately wanted to give aid to the Venezuela people, but they don't even care about the people in this country.
No.
Why are they trying to feed us this line that they desperately care about people of color in Venezuela when they don't?
Yeah, I mean, all you need to do is look at how our homeless veterans are being treated, and that tells you what the real U.S. government attitude is towards the disadvantaged. Again, it's just another big lie. It's like Saddam's nuclear weapons or Assad's sarin gas. This time it's Maduro's starving his own people. But it's just another lie to sell us another war.
Absolutely. And also I want to mention before I go about that CNN town hall. Bernie did say that he's against military intervention, but he didn't say CIA intervention as well. So there's a little bit of choice words with that as well. And Bernie Sanders, from the people that support him, they are trolls, and they hang on every word, and they know what you're saying, Bernie. You're going to have to say, I'm against boots on the ground, I'm against covert actions, I'm against drone strikes in Venezuela. You can't just be lazy on that one. I know that he refused, under the pressure of Wolf Blitzer, why won't you call Maduro a dictator? That's the sort of questions was asked. I mean, it was just one sentence, coming from some sort of CNN hack. He's supposed to be prime time. Why won't you support a dictator? And then, of course, Bernie tried to turn around and talked about free elections as if Venezuela has a free election system just like they got in Saudi Arabia. I mean, what type of answer is that, Bernie? It's not like Saudi Arabia. There's free elections inside of Venezuela.
Well, again, going back to former President Jimmy Carter, he's been down there, and he says Venezuela actually does have a very open, transparent, and verifiable election system. It's one of the best in the world, as opposed to the United States, which has one of the worst election systems in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a psyop. It's all PC campaign. We're better than you. We're the rightful owners of this world. our dominance should be in every single country. We are a wartime economy, and it's absolutely appalling that people are going to go along with the psyops or really don't even care. I mean, people have the same understanding of what's going on in the world as the same people presenting the information to us, and they all have mass comm degrees. Can I ask you a question real quick before I go, Michael?
Sure.
You heard that speech that Omar gave when she was interviewing Abrams. Did you notice that she kept calling him Mr. Adams? Like not pronouncing his name, and she pronounced Iran-Contra Iran-Chokoche?
I missed
As
that.
if she was reading from a script. You know, like, I wonder if she doesn't even know what Iran-Contras was or really who Elliot Abrams was. And there's just, like, so much emphasis on her for calling out this war criminal.
Well,
Maybe
you know,
she
given
put
how
up to
young
it.
she is, you know, it's entirely possible that she doesn't know what Iran-Contra was, and she hasn't done her homework on it. I mean, you know, how old was she in the 1980s?
Right. She was just 4 years older than me. You know, she's very young. She's a very young woman, and she's probably just a prop to put into place to take distraction off of the DNC. You know, I definitely think that's the case.
Okay, well, thank you for the phone call, and we're going to let you go and switch over to Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I'm kind of curious. You know, I'm the kind of guy that believes that numbers don't lie. And several days ago, and I'm hoping you can help me make sense of this. Several days ago, I'm listening, I guess probably about maybe, 5 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, I'm listening to Trump talking about how unemployment is down to 3-point-something%. And I'm thinking, wow, it's a record. And then he follows that up with, that's why we have to bring in, because, you know, what got me thinking was what you guys were talking earlier about Trump living on his promises, you know, and he's like, so we have to bring in these people from, you know, these migrants to take up these jobs that we just can't fill because we don't have enough people because our unemployment is so low. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. If unemployment is 3-point-something, first of all, that's a record to my knowledge. I'm 56, and I don't recall unemployment ever being that low since I've been aware politically. Maybe when I was younger, and you know, I was thinking more about comic books and, you know, Matchbox cars. But I'm thinking, okay, if unemployment is down to 3-point-something%, to the point where we have to bring these migrants in to work the jobs, explain to me why JCPenney is closing another 24 stores, why Gap is closing another 230 stores, why Payless Shoe Source is closing another 2,100 stores, why U.S. exports declined by $4 billion.
Art, okay, need to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking with Art off the grid. And Art, first of all, we know that the unemployment numbers are a complete joke.
Yeah.
Even CNN reported on the nearly 100 million Americans who have been out of work for months, if not years. The problem is either Trump is BSing us all, or he doesn't know, and that's even more dangerous. For him to be the president and not understand that the numbers he's being handed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics are inaccurate. And that's leading him to make a bad decision, which is to open the door to more legal immigration. And I don't have a problem with legal immigration, but not at a time when so many Americans are out of work.
Right. Well, you know, I'm like I was saying, you know, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm thinking, you know, and that's just a few examples of a list of I've got a list of 18 things here that just seriously contradict everything that's being said by the Trump administration. And none of this sounds like a thriving, booming economy to me. No. So, you know, in this being the case, I don't know, man. I mean, I want somebody to explain to me how these numbers match what's being said, because they don't. I'm a big fan of numbers. I love numbers because they don't lie, and nothing makes any sense. And so, I tend to agree with the what seems to be the popular consensus that, especially talking to people around here who actually voted for Trump and were like, rah, 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 make America great again. We're number one. And now they're telling me, screw that. I'll vote for any Republican that does not have the name Trump. And
yeah,
if they can't
I'm hearing that a lot myself as well. And it may have to do with Trump's ego, which we know he has a great amount of. He just may not want to get the blame for the declining economy, but we're heading into a recession, and it's probably going to hit really hard before his end of term in office, and the Democrats are going to blame him for it. They're going to say, well, Obama left the economy in great shape, and Trump just ruined it with all his tariffs and anything. But of course, the problems with our economy have been a long, long time coming, and each presidential administration just sort of kicks that can down the road, because they don't want to be the one who says, folks, we're really in a lot of trouble. You're on your own. Thank you and good night.
Yeah, I think I'm tend to agree with you on that. But I don't know. It just doesn't look good. And I'm thinking this recession that everybody wanted to deny in 2008, 2009, and 2010, I think that's going to be like nothing compared to what's coming. Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Mike. Coming up on the end of the broadcast, but great work, man.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. And we're coming up on the top of the hour. We do have one more hour in today's program here, so the phone lines are open. And there's the music. Time for station identification, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we have a caller waiting on the line. So let's go on over to Keith Rogers. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, other than the fact that we had 49 degrees below zero last time. No, I'm kidding. Below freezing. That's why a man's manhood is protected. But anyway, hey, what Art said, I always look at it this way, Mike. I guess this is from watching too many Perry Mason movies and stuff or actual shows, but a witness impeachment is where in a jury trial, the witness is asked a certain amount of questions there, and one of the premises is where he self-impeaches himself. And I always apply this to politicians. And in an examination there, they'll ask the witness what transpired, and just as a reference, the witness may say that, well, I witnessed it when the guy went through the light, which was green at the time, and the other guy plowed into him. But then under cross-examination, in his own written testimony there at the crime scene, he says that the light was red. But in the premise of the whole thing is that in today's political realm, it is the same thing in a courtroom, because if you lie once, whether it's one of these politicians that's against Trump or anyone else, if they lie once, what's to prevent them from lying again?
Well, that's exactly the point. Once you're caught lying, it's presumed that you're not truthful from that point on.
Right, and of course the deal is to throw out all testimony from that claimed whatever his claim was, and that's the issue there. So they're all admitted liars.
Yeah, we know that. I mean, it's like the old joke. How do you tell when a politician's lying? Their lips are moving.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that at you there. But anyway, you and Claire have a wonderful day over there, okay?
Thank you very much. We will, and thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and the phone lines are empty right now. All right, India and Pakistan. Pakistan's attempt to de-escalate the situation by returning the captured Indian pilot did not work over the weekend. They have been trading artillery fire over the line of control in Kashmir. and 8 people so far have been killed, mostly civilians. So it looks like that could definitely turn out to be an open war, and of course with the potential of a nuclear exchange between them, which is going to make people very, very nervous here. Now, Russia is getting ready to open a factory in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh to manufacture AK-203s. And it's estimated this factory will produce 750,000 of these Kalashnikovs for the Indian military. And so that is definitely some serious build up. And again, to repeat, Israel has a role in India's escalating conflict with Pakistan, because India is one of Israel's largest customers for the arms trade. And so the more that India and Pakistan fight each other, the more money that Israel is making. And as a little side note, if Israel is making enough weapons to sell them to other countries, why do they need the American taxpayer to pay to give weapons to them? I would like to know that. All right. Over in the Gaza Strip, there are 13,000 Palestinians. They're homeless 4.5 years after Israel's destructive assault on the siege. This was 50 days of Operation Protective Edge in 2014, and Israeli attacks caused significant damage to civilian infrastructure, with 18,000 residential units either completely destroyed or heavily damaged. And more than 100,000 Palestinians were left homeless, or 17,000 families. And many of them still are, because Israel will not allow the supplies across the border to rebuild those residential units. Now, in order to build in Israel or in the occupied territories, you have to have a building permit. And one of the excuses that Israel will give for the demolition of Palestinian homes is that they did not have a building permit. But there's this article that came on out of Middle East Monitor saying that basically the Jerusalem Planning and Building Committee simply rejects building permits for Palestinians. That there is a bias. Israelis can get building permits, Palestinians cannot. And so it's not surprising that after a while, Palestinians will just go ahead and build someplace to live, because they got to have someplace to live. And then Israel will come in and knock it down, saying you didn't have a proper building permit. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Okay, Israel has apparently landed a $700 million deal. Actually, it's almost $800 million deal for this Israeli defense firm to supply Barak 8 LRSAM air and missile defense systems to 7 ships of the Indian Navy. India is definitely arming up here. This is the long-range surface-to-air missile system, and it's in use by Israel's Navy as well as by India's Navy, Air, and Land forces. And again, if Israel's making enough weapons to be able to sell them, why are Americans paying to send them weapons? Just something to think about. All right. Head of the British Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, is calling on the British government to condemn Israel's killing of Palestinians, as well as to freeze arms sales to the occupation state. And his remarks came in the wake of that UN report that found that Israel may have committed war crimes against the Palestinians. And I can just see the Israel supporters in Great Britain. Oh, you anti-Semite, you're an anti-Semite, you hate the Jewish people, you support terrorists here. So Corbyn on Twitter tweeted out, the UN says Israel's killing of demonstrators in Gaza, including children, paramedics, and journalists, may constitute war crimes or crimes against humanity. The British government must unequivocally condemn the killings and freeze arms sales to Israel. Now, the UN report, which was published last week, said the Israeli security forces killed and maimed Palestinian demonstrators who did not pose an imminent threat of death or injury to others when they were shot, nor were they directly participating in hostilities, adding the protests had been civilian in nature. And again, we're just a few weeks away from the one-year anniversary of the Great March of Return. Okay, earlier today, the U.S. State Department announced they are closing the U.S. consulate in Jerusalem. Now, that's not the same thing as the embassy, but the consulate served as the main American diplomatic mission to the Palestinians. And so this is a major downgrade of the diplomatic mission to the Palestinians. So instead, all future U.S. diplomacy to the Palestinians will be handled by a newly assembled Palestinian Affairs Unit, which will operate out of the U.S. Embassy to Israel and under the direct command of that embassy. So it's just another way of flipping the bird to the Palestinians here. This is a very bizarre story. This came out of Zero Hedge. Apparently, the U.S. Navy has now declared the F-35C stealth fighter ready for combat. And they can declare it all they want, but one has to wonder why they're making that statement. Are they actually going to put it into combat? But they're basically saying that their fleet of Lockheed Martin F-35C stealth fighter jets are operationally ready for war. They have passed all the tests to be flown on combat missions. Now, that's kind of a mystery because as far as I'm aware, the software for the onboard cannon still has not been delivered. And they're still upgrading and patching all kinds of software for the so-called glass cockpit. But apparently the commander of Naval Air Forces Vice Admiral DeWolf Mueller is saying, yep, we're ready to go. So they may have to walk that back. Turning to the domestic politics, apparently the House Intel witness Felix Sater was part of Loretta Lynch's secret docket. And House Intelligence Committee Chair Schiff intends to rely on testimony from former felon and Russian mobster Felix Sater during the committee's investigation into President Trump's finances and connection to Russia. They're just piling on the investigations, trying to find something. And apparently this guy just ripped off a huge amount of money and evaded prosecution under then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. So they've got him here. Story out of Bloomberg. Robert Mueller's final report will ignite an epic war over disclosure. Now, sometime, presumably this week, Robert Mueller is going to close up his shop and submit his final report, and that is going to set off a major chain of events. And there's going to be this struggle in Congress, on cable TV and social media, and maybe even in the courts, how much of this report must be disclosed. Now, right now, it's going to be a secret report to Attorney General William Barr. Now, of course, if they don't release it, the Democrats are going to be able to say, well, you know, we have heard from a reliable source that the report implicates Donald Trump, that there was collusion. So I think they ought to release the whole thing myself. Of course, if they do, it is likely to be an embarrassment for the Democrats and for Robert Mueller, because it's going to say, we didn't find anything. And we've already had people who've come on out saying, it's going to be anticlimactic. There's really nothing there. There's a lot of rumor and innuendo. And Warner's already out there saying, well, you know, there's plenty of evidence of Russian collusion. So they're already trying to pre-spin that whole situation. The Trump administration has given its approval for lawsuits against Cuba for property seized during the Cuban Revolution. And they're going to allow lawsuits to be brought against Cuban companies and individuals by people whose property was seized by the communist government during and after Castro's revolution in the late 1950s. And this is the latest move by the United States to punish Cuba and encourage democracy in the communist nation. And the State Department announced it would suspend for 30 days part of the 1996 Libertad Act, also known as the Helms-Burton Act, and allow some lawsuits to be brought against companies using properties confiscated by the Cuban government. Now, I wish this would also apply to Palestine for all of the lands that were stolen during the creation of the State of Israel. Finally, looking at Korea, people are wondering why the Hanoi summit failed. Some are saying it was just, the U.S. wasn't giving enough. North Korea isn't willing to get rid of the rest of their nuclear weapons. Some are even saying Trump basically dumped the whole summit deliberately to please the war hawks. But there was an agreement that was ready for signature that would have allowed American inspectors to oversee and verify the dismantling of the Yongbyon plutonium facility that originally launched North Korea's nuclear program. And they were talking about a joint declaration to end the Korean War. And apparently Kim Jong-un was okay with both of these, as well as exchanging liaisons, diplomatic staff between the two countries. But it just fell apart at the last end. Okay, former Vice President Joe Biden, supposedly we will hear any day now if he's going to step into the 2020 campaign. And already there are articles out here basically attacking him. Have you noticed any time somebody comes forward and says, I'm going to run in 2020, they're immediately attacked in the corporate media? I'm smelling a pattern here, that they're already trying to clear out the Democratic nomination for her Hillary-ness. But anyway, this article, which came out of the Political Insider, is focusing on Joe Biden's history of racially charged remarks. And they go back to like 1975, where Biden says desegregation codifies the concept that a black is inferior to a white. Well, I don't think that's necessarily racist. I think he was making a comment about the desegregation, not the races themselves. Apparently, Biden at one point expressed a separate but equal view toward racial desegregation efforts in schools during this 1975 interview with U.S. News and World Report. And then he went on to basically criticize the idea of forced busing of students, saying it was harmful for several reasons. And I remember when busing came along, a lot of people said, yeah, you're forcing these kids to get on a bus and go a huge distance to school and back home. It's taking up a lot of time out of their days. So we'll see what's going to happen with him. And I can imagine that probably Hillary has called Biden at least once saying, you don't want to run in 2020. Just trust me, you don't want to go through that here. Article out of Zero Hedge. America's trust in corporate media has hit rock bottom. And it says, gone are the days when U.S. consumers look to the nightly news and print media as a trusted source of information, and especially now if they hold conservative views, according to a new poll by Columbia Journalism Review. And things are going from bad to worse for the U.S. legacy media as its trust credentials have reached an all-time new low, as if that were even possible. It has a lower trust rating than lawyers and members of Congress. And they did it to themselves, and I have absolutely no sympathy for them whatsoever. And they're having to lay off people. I think they laid off something like 15,000 last year. Their ad revenues are down. Some of them have been caught cheating, artificially inflating their viewership numbers to try and keep the ad rates up. That's how desperate they are. And I remember when Claire and I were still involved in the local commercial production industry, one of the last times we went down to one of the network affiliates, it was basically this empty barn. There was like a handful of people, and all these offices were empty. They just had to let everybody go. Another poll, this one is from Gallup, is basically saying that the image of the United States around the world is actually very, very low, and that Americans are being deceived by being told that we're still held in high regard by the rest of the planet. But we're not. And again, it's because of how our government has been behaving here. Another article, this one from antiwar.com, once again reiterating that WikiLeaks got the DNC emails from an insider, not from Russia. And we've talked about this many times before, where the metadata on those files shows they were copied off too fast to have been copied over the internet. They were copied onto a flash drive, and they were walked out of that building more than likely by Seth Rich. And one of the reasons to think that is that following Seth Rich's murder, the flow of information to WikiLeaks stopped. Now, in the economic news here, story out of ibtimes.com, saying that the trade war to China may end soon and all the U.S. tariffs may be lifted. And I know there's a lot of people in the United States who would like to see that, because along with resistance to GMO, those tariffs have severely impacted our agricultural exports. Okay, we're going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about the economic news, and over in the BRICS nations, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they are moving forward with their common payment system, which will be called BRICS Pay. And they're basically working on this creation of this online wallet that would combine the payment systems of all BRICS members and allow them to basically carry out commerce among themselves without going through the dollar and without going through any U.S.-controlled payment systems, which would make them basically immune from U.S. sanctions here. Over at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is a corporate member of the Council on Foreign Relations, they're launching a new lobbying effort called the USMCA Coalition to garner congressional and public support for the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement Integration Scheme. So once again, we're starting to see they want to form a North American Union, because after all, look how wonderfully that European Union worked out. So this USMCA coalition is going to make the case for expeditious passage of the agreement to members of Congress, and will work to educate the American public about the benefits of the New Deal. And again, I would advise anybody who's looking at this issue, look at what the European Union did to the member states and how well that all worked out for them. All right, Alan Dershowitz is back in the news, and oddly enough, the legal team for him has cautioned against press access to a hearing regarding his former client and associate convicted pedophile Jeff Epstein, who was given a slap on the wrist in 2008 by then U.S. Attorney for Southern Florida and current Labor Secretary Alex Acosta. Epstein sexually abused dozens of underage girls in his Palm Beach mansion, and Acosta is under fire separately of the sealed records appeal. So Epstein is a billionaire. He's a friend of the Clintons. Bill Clinton flew on his Lolita Express Boeing 727 jet dozens of times, and was convicted of soliciting an underage girl for prostitution, one of only 2 counts for which he served 13 months in custody with work release. So that's back in the news. And again, I'm sure that Epstein's got the goods on a lot of people, and not just Bill Clinton. Of course, it's easy to get the goods on Bill Clinton. Anything with a skirt, he's going to grab. But apparently, there's a report that Trump visited his little Caribbean paradise at least once. So we may have Trump by the short and curlies as well. Ilhan Omar is responding to criticism about her comments about AIPAC and her comments about the behavior of the government of Israel. And her fellow members of Congress are saying, you should be nice, you should be gentle. And she's come on back saying, I should not be expected to have allegiance to Israel. And no, she shouldn't. Those members of Congress are supposed to be loyal to we, the people of the United States of America. And I don't know about you, but I am really sick and tired of all these politicians who, even as they fight with each other and they're letting our country just decay before our very eyes, how they will daven to Tel Aviv. They'll just bow and scrape, and whatever Netanyahu wants, Netanyahu gets. It's disgusting. It's humiliating, and I'm sick and tired of it. Over in Finland, apparently there is a new vigilante group that has formed in response to the epidemic of rapes and child sexual abuse from the migrants coming on in. They call themselves the Soldiers of Odin, and they released a video saying, we are now on the hunt for rapists and pedophiles, and the video was subtitled both in English and in Arabic. Facebook and Vimeo keep deleting it. But in the video, they say the pedophile hunting season has been opened. So I guess over at Facebook, they like pedophiles. I think that's what's going on here. Over in Denmark, 1 out of every 5 migrants say that the rape is the woman's fault because those Danish women dress so provocatively. And you know, migrant men just can't be, you know, blamed for not being able to restrain themselves when they see these women looking like that. It's all their fault. I thought we'd gotten past that whole blame the victim situation. Over in Russia, the government is getting ready to launch a plan that will pay $14,000 in cash to families who have 3 or more children. And they're doing it because they want to keep Russia Russian. They don't want it to be overrun by migrants who will replace their culture. And Putin thinks this is a very important policy. All right, we're going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones to John in British Columbia. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Yeah, you had a fellow on there earlier who was about mentioning about divide and conquer.
Yes.
Well, I think a lot of that in there, too, is conditioning. You know, conditioning the people to accept Israel.
Yep.
Like when they make all these laws and you got to swear allegiance to Israel. I mean, that's totally ridiculous. I mean, America should only have one allegiance, and that's to America.
Yes.
And one of the other comments or things I want to mention, like I listened to Jake Bafornius. He has a show similar to yours, but he just does the talking. And he was mentioning on a program on February 15th, or 18th, I think, maybe it's in February. And he mentioned about there's like the CIA is what they call the World Fact Book.
Yes.
And there's 102 countries on that.
Yep.
And he mentioned about like Israel, where a while back your government pledged $38 billion to Israel.
Yep.
Over 10 years. And apparently that 3.8 billion, they give them $3.8 billion a year.
Yeah.
And that's given to them at the first of the year. But everybody else that America donates money to gets theirs quarterly. And like on this World Fact Book, Israel is in 22nd place, and they have a surplus of over $10 billion, whereas the United States is at the bottom of the list, and they're $408 billion, or over $4 billion in a deficit position. So, you know, I think they ought to take note of who the politicians who, you know, do all these things, and then when it comes time for their elections, get them out of there. I mean, it's, you know, it's just disgraceful. We're not much better here. We have our own problems here with our Attorney General right now. But yeah, I listen to this kind of stuff, and it's like totally outrageous. Like, and Israel puts that $3.8 billion into Federal Reserve on Wall Street and makes interest off that money. That's just adding insult to injury, as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, I mean, trying to get these guys to toe the line and, you know, do what's right for America, because as far as I'm concerned, they're being bought off. You know, you have your, what do you call them? Your, people that, hang on a second, lobbyists?
Yes.
The way I look at it, the lobbyists are actually bribing the government to get what they want. I mean, if you were to go and got pulled over for speeding and offered a cop $100 to get rid of the ticket, they put you in jail for bribery.
Yes.
And the way I look at it is this lobbyist thing, it's all bribery. You know, so that in itself is corruption.
Well, it's definitely a corrupt system. I mean, AIPAC will donate huge amounts of money to get members elected to Congress who will support Israel. Those members of Congress will vote to send a lot of money over to Israel, part of which comes back to AIPAC to keep the cycle going. It's a kickback scheme. Unfortunately, under U.S. law, it's all perfectly legal. And that $3.8 billion a year, that's not all of it. I mean, the United States just sent a THAAD missile system over to Israel. They just keep giving them stuff.
Yeah, well, that's what I say, that's what Jake was saying, that it's the $3.8 billion. Then there's all the other stuff on top of that they give them, you know, for as well. But everybody else gets it on a quarterly basis, and Israel gets their money up front, and then they turn around and stick it back in your banks and make interest off that money. So it is, you know, the system is absolutely broke.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely, it is totally corrupted. And again, I remember in elementary school, you know, during social studies, we were, you know, told to beware, the commies are working to subvert your government. And it turned out that our government was being subverted. We were just looking in the wrong direction.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a diversion? Well, I look at it this way, that any kind of a government is a good government so long as the people that are in charge are honest.
Yes.
The biggest problem is we don't have honest politicians. And it doesn't matter what country you go to, they're all in it for whatever they can get out of it.
Well, that's the curse of political power. It attracts the very sort of people who should not be allowed to have it. You know, people who'd be good in government generally don't want to put up with all the headaches, you know, to deal with the machinery of government and try and get anything done. The only ones who do are the ones who are saying, boy, just one term in Congress and I'll be set for life.
Yeah. Well, that's about the size of it. And then they don't have to be in there that long and they get their pensions for their lifetime.
Well, they get a pension for their lifetime. It's a sliding scale. The longer you're in Congress, the more the pension is. Anyway, John, we're going to let you go. We're going to take another phone call from James in Ohio. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I sent you a link to a video earlier today concerning Trump's executive order that's supposed to be upcoming with regard to free speech on college campuses and his administration's policy as far as equating speech that's critical of Israeli government policy with anti-Semitism and seeking to criminalize it. It's very, very important. Second of all, the thing in Venezuela people are so anxious to define it in terms of two sides, black or white. But the way I see it is that it's like net neutrality. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Do you want the government or corporations determining what you can say online? Number three, I had an idea as far as since I've been a victim of identity theft. Now when I have to enter my credit card number anywhere, I will make liberal use of letters and special characters, and then use the mouse and the cursor and the backspace key to delete them. And perhaps somebody like you, unlike fired journalists, you don't need to learn to code. You could make a software that would do this in a pseudo-random manner, and therefore when you, like if hackers were using a serial keylogger or whatever to get your credit card number, special characters and the wrong numbers, and then delete them, and therefore confuse the hackers. It may work, it may not, I don't know, but that's all I had for you.
Okay, well, the problem is that keyloggers are a problem, but they're not the only one. And once your credit card number goes out over the web, supposedly it's encrypted by the browsers, but that encryption is not terribly strong because the U.S. government will not allow us ordinary people to have strong encryption.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's measures and countermeasures, but that could be a possible countermeasure. So, what do you think about the Venezuela? And did you happen to see that video I sent you the link to? It was with regard to the Trump administration is equating like BDS with anti-Semitism, and any criticism of Israeli policies with Nazi-like like the Daily Stormer or something, the Volkisch or Beobachter type speech.
Well, again, this is an attack on our First Amendment right to freedom of expression, which gives us the right to criticize government, any government. And I'm glad that there are some companies now that are going to court to start the legal process. And this is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And I can't imagine, especially a conservative Supreme Court, ruling for an Israel exception to the First Amendment right to freedom of speech, because that would be a dangerous precedent. Then they'll carve out a vaccine exemption to freedom of speech. Then there'll be a GMO exemption, and they'll just chip away at our First Amendment right, which we won't have freedom of speech. We'll have permitted speech. But I absolutely reject the idea that criticism of the actions of the government of Israel represents anti-Semitism. That's like saying that the only reason people complain about the Nazis is they hate Germans.
Right. All right. Thank you, and keep up the good work. I'm going to be late with my donation this month, but I will give it to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go, and the lines are open. All righty. Over in Oregon, lawmakers are getting ready to introduce a bill to eliminate proof of legal residence to get a driver's license or an ID. So again, we're seeing the liberals are just chipping away at what it means to be a U.S. citizen. They're just flooding this country with illegal immigrants, and they don't want any means of identifying them as illegals so that they can vote. And they're going to use those illegal immigrants to vote Democratic. And Trump, if he does not get a handle on this, if he does not get a national voter ID law, then he's a one-term president. That's it. And if the rumors are true and Hillary is stepping back on in, she's going to do everything that she did in 2016 to steal that White House, only twice as hard. And that's why we have this flood of illegal immigrants coming into this country right now. And every time you say this is a problem, oh, you're being a racist, you're being insensitive, you just don't care about those people. Well, I care about Americans first and foremost. I'm sorry. And by the way, illegal isn't a race. All righty. Over in Great Britain, they're starting to talk with the United States about a post-Brexit trade deal. The U.S. wants greater access to the food markets for products from the United States that were banned under European Union rules, like chlorinated chicken or hormone-fed beef. And the U.S. is laying out its aims for a trade deal to cut tariff and non-tariff barriers for U.S. industrial and agricultural foods and reduce regulatory differences. So they're already getting ready to flood Great Britain with chlorinated chicken here. Over in Sweden, at the city of Gavle, they had this digital advertising board that represented a welcome sign. And one of the images that cycled through there was a woman in a hijab, which so angered the locals that they basically shot up the digital advertising board. So again, look at what's going on over in the European Union before you start thinking about supporting the North American Union here. Apparently over in Spain, Palma, in Mallorca, there's been another immigrant arrested for sexual assault. The young man of Moroccan origin apparently just ran into the room totally naked, grabbed a 24-year-old social worker, pushed her into a bathroom, and tried to assault her, but she managed to escape from the attacker. Hungary is still in the news. They're taking a strong stand for nationalism, and Hungary's foreign affairs minister has warned that Europe will be weakened if it abandons families in favor of mass migration. Europe will be strong if it becomes a Europe of families, because if the Europe of migrants is realized here, then it will be weak. This was Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade Peter, I can't even pronounce this, Szijjártó, said during a conference in Budapest on Thursday. So there is definitely a pushback against this globalism things. The EU Commission is striking back at the Hungarian information campaign against Juncker and Soros. Hungary is out there basically saying that Soros is trying to flood the EU with migrants. And the EU Commission is out there saying, oh, no, there's nothing to worry about. There's, really, Hungary's just they're being picky. What can I tell you here? All right. Over in Great Britain, there was this British Jewish organization critical of Israel. They have been forced to cancel the screening of a controversial documentary in the House of Commons. And the film explores the background to the allegations of some of the criticism. And Labour MP Chris Williamson booked a room in Parliament to screen the film about the suspended Jewish Labour activist Jackie Walker. And the screening was organized by Jewish Voice for Labour. And so local Israel supporters said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And so the screening's been canceled. All right. Now, as you know, Democrats they're all gung-ho on gun control. And they're behind this idea of universal background checks, except when it comes to illegal immigrants. So the Democrats are pushing through legislation for universal background checks on all firearms purchases, including private sales, but they objected to a Republican amendment that would make these same background checks alert federal authorities when an illegal immigrant tried to illegally purchase a firearm. Every one of those illegals, that's a vote. We got to protect those. So what if he's buying a firearm illegally? 4 companies to avoid right now: Levi Strauss, Tom's, Dick's Sporting Goods, and RXR Realty. They're all supporting gun control. Here's an interesting story. Over in the European Union, there's this Jewish organization is calling upon lawmakers to revise European gun control laws so that Jews can begin arming themselves. They literally want the laws where Europeans are not allowed to have guns unless they're Jewish. Then they can have guns. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. And over in Connecticut, there is still this big stink over the transgender high school athletes, and some of the biological women are starting to speak out about what's going on. And it has to do with these two high school sprinters who were born male but identify as female, and they're just absolutely sweeping all the competition in the state. And so this female-born sprinter has come on out saying what is, the obvious thing here. Selena Sewell of Connecticut's Glastonbury High School told Fox News' Laura Ingraham, because I know I have put in, some of my friends and fellow competitors have put in so much time and effort to take down our times and compete ourselves better, but we are not physically able to be competitive against someone who's biologically a male. And she's frustrated because these two biological males who think that they're women took first and second place. If they hadn't been in the competition, this girl would have placed high enough where she would be seen by more college coaches. She obviously wants to get an athletic scholarship. Now, the transgender community is out there saying, well, it's okay for these athletes who were born male to compete against girls because they're going to take drugs that lower their testosterone. Well, that's all well and good, maybe for the moment. The issue is they've spent their entire life growing up with testosterone, and it has given them more muscle mass, greater bone density. They're taller, they're stronger. That is just the absolute fact. And there is no way you can basically trim them down to be the equal of the biological females just by cutting out the testosterone, because the effect is cumulative over their entire lifetime. And I can understand the frustration of these girls, and I don't think it's fair to these girls to have these misidentified males competing against them. That's why there is a male and female division in sports. It is simply acknowledging that males are taller, stronger, faster than females. It's pretty much always been that way, with precious few exceptions. So I think there needs to be an accommodation. Okay. Story coming out of the Daily Mail. And basically, a former governor who resigned from Tavistock Gender Clinic says he fears we're hurrying children down a transgender path they may bitterly regret. And what he's basically saying is transgenderism is being marketed. It's being encouraged. These kids are being taught to say they're transgender because it's cool. It's socially in. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for... can't remember my boss's name here. John Stedmiller. It's a senior moment. What can I tell you? Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. And I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. And please donate. Take care of us so we can take care of you. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.